Chapter 1. The portal opens. The hyperspace portal above the besieged world of Calith did not shimmer, it roared. A distortion in the void, a wound in spacetime, expanding with brutal precision. Alien sensors across the system screamed warnings, their operators scrambling to interpret the impossible readings. The Calith defense grid, already battered by months of siege, faltered as the enemy blockade tightened its grip. The hegemony's warships, sleek and arrogant, had ringed the planet like predators circling a wounded prey. Then the distortion stabilized. 10,000 human dreadnoughts emerged in formation, their hulls blackened with adaptive plating, their drives shedding arcs of energy as they forced themselves into real space. The scale of it was obscene, an armada so vast that the Calith skies themselves seemed to buckle under its arrival. Each vessel carried the scars of Saul's defense, rebuilt in haste, armed with weapons designed not for deterrence but annihilation. On the flagship Iron Requiem, Captain Voss stood at the command dais, his voice steady as the tactical feeds cascaded across the holosphere. Fleet integrity confirmed, portal transit complete, all ships lock into battle lattice, we are not here to posture. We are here to break them. No one spoke in reply. The silence was not hesitation, it was discipline. Across the blockade, hegemony admirals barked orders, their voices sharp with disbelief. Impossible, humans cannot field this many capital ships, their industry is fractured, primitive. Yet the sensor returns did not lie. 10,000 dreadnoughts, each bristling with rail batteries, plasma lances, and missile swarms, aligned with mechanical precision. The Calith defenders, weary and half-starved, watched from their orbital stations. Their comm channels flooded with disbelief, then with a rising chant, "The humans have come." Voss's eyes narrowed as the tactical overlay painted the enemy disposition. The hegemony blockade was formidable, 3 concentric rings of cruisers, carriers, and siege platforms, but their arrogance had left gaps, assuming the Calith would collapse before relief could arrive. Now those gaps were targets. "Signal Rurk," Voss ordered. "Carrier wings launch immediately. We cut their outer ring before they can regroup." On the Hammerfall, Commander Rurk's voice carried through the strike channels. "All squadrons, burn hard, no theatrics. We punch holes, we keep them open, and we let the dreadnoughts through." The first wave of human fighters streaked forward, their drives tuned for brutal acceleration. Alien interceptors scrambled to meet them, but the humans did not dogfight. They fired in disciplined bursts, shredding sensor buoys, detonating fuel barges, collapsing the blockade's logistics before the battle had even begun. Then the dreadnoughts advanced. The Iron Requiem's forward batteries lit the void, a storm of kinetic slugs accelerated to fractions of light speed. Hegemony cruisers disintegrated under the barrage, their shields collapsing in cascades of plasma. The Calith orbital stations trembled as shockwaves rippled through the atmosphere. On the enemy flagship, Admiral Sarath clawed at the tactical displays. "Hold formation, their numbers mean nothing if we break their cohesion." But cohesion was the human's weapon. Each dreadnought slaved its targeting to the fleet lattice, firing not as individuals but as a single organism. Every salvo was calculated, every strike coordinated. Voss's voice cut through the command net. Outer ring collapsing. "Push the breach, no hesitation." The dreadnought Worldrender, repaired and reforged after Mars, surged forward at the tip of the spear. Its hull still bore the scars of the last battle, but its guns spoke with renewed fury. Plasma lances carved through hegemony carriers, igniting their hangars in catastrophic chain reactions. Calith defense commanders, stunned, began relaying coordinates. "Human fleet, enemy siege platforms locked on our cities, we cannot hold them." Voss's reply was cold, precise. "You will not need to, we will erase them." The second wave of dreadnoughts fired in unison, their missiles saturating the orbital grid. Siege platforms, once symbols of hegemony dominance, erupted in fireballs that lit the Calith night. Civilians on the surface looked up and saw the sky burn, not with their destruction but with their salvation. Rurk's fighters cut deeper, striking command relays and jamming enemy coordination. Alien pilots trained for superiority found themselves isolated, their formations collapsing under relentless human pressure. On the bridge of the Iron Requiem, Voss watched the blockade unravel. "They thought Saul was the limit of our reach. They thought wrong. Today we show them what humanity builds when cornered." The Calith comm channels filled with static, then with a single transmission. "Human fleet, we stand with you. Tell us where to strike." Voss allowed himself the faintest nod. "Integration protocols online. Calith forces linked to our lattice. You fight with us now." The alien defenders, long accustomed to isolation, suddenly found their targeting systems enhanced, their fire coordinated with human precision. Together they tore into the blockade's remnants. Admiral Sarath's final command was desperate. "Retreat. All units retreat. This battle is lost." But retreat was not mercy. Human dreadnoughts pursued, their drives burning white, cutting down fleeing ships with ruthless efficiency. The Calith skies cleared, the blockade shattered. On the Iron Requiem, Voss turned to his officers. This is not victory. This is the opening act. The hegemony will send more. They will not forgive this humiliation, but now the galaxy knows humanity does not wait to be saved. Humanity arrives. The fleet held position above Calith, 10,000 dreadnoughts casting shadows across the alien world. For the first time in months, the Calith people looked upward and saw not predators, but allies. And in the silence after battle, the humans prepared for the next war. The 10,000 dreadnoughts held station in low Calith orbit, their combined drive wash rippling the planet's upper cloud layers like a stone dropped in still water. Point defense grids swept the atmosphere in overlapping loops, picking off the last of the blockade's escape pods before they could reach the system's jump gate. On the bridge of the Iron Requiem, damage control feeds scrolled across the main view screen. 17 human dreadnoughts had taken moderate hull damage during the blockade run, 0 catastrophic losses, Calith fleet integration latency at 0.02% and dropping. Voss stood at the tactical console, his gaze fixed on the thermal overlay of Calith's northern polar range. A faint ping, buried under the mountain's geothermal noise, caught his eye. He zoomed in. 3 hegemony heavy landers, cloaked with outdated signature masking tech, tucked into a glacial cirque. Their power signatures matched a Class 9 atmospheric incinerator, the same model the hegemony had used to glass 3 Calith outpost colonies 6 months prior. Sensors confirmed 3 hostile landers, payload armed, the tactical officer said, no inflection in his voice. Incinerator core is at 78% charge, time to fire 87 minutes. Voss's jaw tightened. The blockade hadn't been the hegemony's only contingency. They deplanted a kill switch on the surface, a last-ditch effort to erase the Calith entirely if their orbital forces failed. Get me a feed from the Calith ground network. Find the nearest friendly unit within 50 clicks of that cirque. The feed flickered to life 4 seconds later, grainy, shot from a cracked helmet cam. Surin, platoon leader of the Calith 7th Rapid Response, hunkered behind a slab of reinforced transit hub concrete, her 2 remaining squad members tending to a wounded civilian cowering in a collapsed stairwell. Her squad had started the siege with 32 personnel, 27 were dead, most from unreturned orbital strikes. Her comms had been dead for 18 hours. Calith unit, this is Admiral Voss, human fleet. The translation overlay crackled to life over her comms. We have identified a hegemony doomsday weapon in your northern polar range. 87 minutes until it fires. We are sending close air support and a marine reinforcement detachment to your position. Do you have transport capable of reaching the cirque? Surin's mandibles clicked once, the Calith equivalent of a sharp nod. We have a skiff parked in the sublevel garage 3 clicks east. Armored, can do 120 clicks an hour on mountain terrain. Access road is held by hegemony ground troops, estimated 40 personnel, 2 anti-air emplacements. We can punch through if we have air cover. Confirmed, Voss said, already typing orders into his console. 2 Calith light corvettes from the integrated fleet will suppress anti-air emplacements along your route. 12 strike fighters from the Crimson Tally will provide overwatch. 50 human marines will drop to your position in 90 seconds. Move fast. The feed cut as the dropship's roar echoed over Surin's comms. She watched through the hub's shattered facade as the matte black craft touched down 2 blocks over, its landing struts kicking up plumes of dust and pulverized concrete. The ramp dropped before the engines cut, and a squad of human marines in matte gray-powered exoskeletons spilled out, Gauss rifles raised, moving in a tight wedge without a wasted step. Their armor was scarred from the blockade fight. One marine's left pauldron dented so badly the internal servo whined audibly. Corporal Rourke, the squad leader, tapped his helmet to switch his external speaker to Calith frequency. We've got your 6. Corvettes are inbound. Fighters are on station. Let's move. Surin hefted her plasma rifle, gesturing for her 2 remaining squad members to grab the wounded civilian. The marine nearest to her slung his rifle and hoisted the civilian over his shoulder without being asked, his exoskeleton compensating for the extra weight without a change in gait. They moved out fast, boots crunching over broken glass and spent shell casings, as the first whump of Corvette missile strikes echoed from the direction of the access road. The Calith corvettes had taken out the anti-air emplacements before Surin's skiff cleared the garage, their precision missiles punching through the hegemony bunkers before the enemy could return fire. The strike fighters strafed the roadblock, Gauss rounds turning the hegemony troops to ash before they could raise their weapons. Surin piled into the skiff's front seat, the marines hanging off the sides, their exoskeletons locking into the skiff's external hardpoints as the engine roared to life. The skiff hit the mountain access tunnel 3 minutes ahead of schedule, bouncing over the rough terrain, the wind whipping Surin's frills back against her skull. Rourke's scanner pinged the lander's incinerator core, now at 82% charge. 4 clicks out, he yelled over the engine noise. We've got maybe 70 minutes left. The lead marine scanner pinged a second signal, faint, coming from the lander's cargo bay. Wait, he said, his voice tight. They released hunter-killer drones. Swarms moving, looks like they're homing on our skiff's signature. Surin slammed the skiff's throttle forward. The tunnel walls blurred past, and far ahead, the glint of the hegemony lander's failing cloaking field came into view. The first drone zipped out of the tunnel's shadows ahead of them, its laser targeting lock painting the skiff's cockpit. The laser lock seared a bright red dot dead center on Surin's windscreen before she could even blink. She didn't hesitate, yanking the control stick hard to port, slamming the skiff's left hull into the tunnel wall. A shower of stone chips and sparks cascaded off the Marines, exoskeletons clamped to the side hardpoints, one of them grunting as the impact jolted his shoulder mount. The drone's first laser pulse burned a molten, fist-sized crater into the rock where the cockpit had been half a second prior, the superheated rock fizzling as it cooled. More drones, 6 of them pouring out of the shadows ahead. Corporal Voss yelled, his voice tight over the engine whine, his shoulder-mounted Gauss repeater already swiveling toward the tunnel mouth. They're splitting formation, 2 tracking our rear signature. Surin slammed the throttle forward, the skiff's engine screaming as it surged down the rough tunnel. The Calith lander's broken cloaking field glinted 1.8 clicks out now, its dented hull pocked with earlier strike fighter hits. Rourke's scanner pinged shrilly in his ear, his face tight as he stared at the readout. Incinerator cores at 87% charge. Time to critical is 48 minutes. If those drones punch our core before we get to the cargo bay, this whole mountain range becomes a crater, plus the 12,000 civilian refugees holed up in the sublevels below. 2 of the hunter-killers zipped past the skiff's nose, their micro-thrusters flaring as they peeled off to flank the rear. Voss didn't wait for orders, squeezing the repeater's trigger. A solid 3-second burst of 10 Gauss rounds chewed through the lead drone's thruster housing, sending it spinning into the tunnel wall where it detonated in a spray of shrapnel and searing plasma. The second drone juked hard, 1 round catching its tail fin, sending it careening into the tunnel ceiling where it sparked and died. A Calith light gunship dipped low through the open upper stretch of the tunnel, its forward 20 cannons glowing as it opened fire. Tracer rounds stitched across the skiff's hull, 1 slamming into the hardpoint next to Private Jax's head, blowing a chunk out of the exoskeleton's pauldron. Jax didn't flinch, swinging his fléchette rifle up and firing a 3-round burst that took out the gunship's sensor array. The craft yawed hard, slamming into the canyon wall above the tunnel mouth, before exploding in a fireball that rained hot debris down across the skiff's hull. 3 drones left, all tracking our core signature. Voss yelled, swiveling his repeater to track the tiny craft zipping through the smoke. One of them got a lock on the skiff's left engine nacelle, firing a micro-missile that slammed into the housing. The skiff lurched hard, Surin fighting the control yoke as the nacelle spat black smoke and the engine's whine dropped an octave. Nacelle's holding, but speed's down 15%, she gritted out, not taking her eyes off the tunnel ahead. The remaining drones adjusted course, streaking straight for the skiff's cockpit. Jax and the other 2 Marines hanging off the right side opened fire, their fléchette rifles stitching rounds across the tunnel. 1 drone's thruster was blown off, it cartwheeled into the tunnel wall. The other 2 kept coming, their laser locks painting the skiff's hull. Surin saw the lander's cargo bay ramp was half hanging off its hinges, the faint outline of the drone launch rack visible inside. She cut the afterburner, yanked the stick hard to starboard, and slammed the skiff into a controlled drift, the tires screeching against the rock as she spun the craft sideways right at the bay opening. The 2 drones overshot, slamming into the back wall of the cargo bay and detonating in a pair of sharp, concussive blasts that rattled the skiff's frame. The skiff skidded to a halt inside the bay, the smell of burnt plastic and cordite thick in the air. The Marines popped their exoskeleton hardpoints in unison, dropping to the cargo bay floor with their rifles raised, scanning for threats. Surin climbed out of the cockpit, her neck frills still flattened against her skull from the wind, and unholstered her sidearm, checking the charge. Rourke was already climbing out of the back seat, his scanner held up as he pinged the incinerator core signal, which was now coming from deep in the lander's lower engineering bay, 40 meters out. Core's at 89% now, he said, his voice quiet but steady, no trace of panic. We've got 42 minutes. The launch rack is still active. I'm reading 6 more drones charging in the bay's storage locker. Surin nodded, gesturing for Voss to take point as she moved toward the bay's rear exit, the skiff's damaged nacelle dripping fluid onto the cargo bay floor behind them. Somewhere above, the distant thud of Calith corvette missile strikes echoed off the canyon walls, a reminder the fight wasn't over yet. Chapter 4, the pressure hull. The rear exit hatch groaned as Voss forced it open, the hydraulics stuttering from shrapnel damage. The Marines filed through, rifles angled low but ready. The engineering bay stretched ahead like a cavern of steel ribs, conduits glowing faintly with residual charge. The incinerator core's pulse was visible even from here, an angry red heart beat deep in the machinery. 6 drones in the locker, Rourke repeated, his scanner chirping. They'll be live in 90 seconds. Surin's frills twitched, her voice clipped. We don't have 90. Voss, breach the locker before they cycle. The human sergeant didn't hesitate. He slung his rifle, pulled a shaped charge from his belt, and slapped it against the locker's seam. The Marines fanned out, covering arcs. The detonation was surgical, metal peeled back with a shriek, revealing the drone rack inside. 6 skeletal frames twitched as their capacitors surged. Cut them before they sink, Voss barked. 2 Marines fired point-blank, shredding the drone's sensor clusters. Sparks cascaded across the deck. One drone managed to lurch forward, its thrusters coughing, but Rourke stepped in, jamming his scanner spike into its core. The machine convulsed, then collapsed in a heap of scorched alloy. Locker clear, Voss confirmed. The bay lights flickered. Above them, the Caliph bombardment intensified. Each impact reverberated through the hull like a drumbeat. Surin glanced upward, her voice low. They're tightening the noose. If the core goes critical, this canyon becomes a crater. Rourke checked his readout. 40 minutes, but the charge curves accelerating, could drop to 35. Surin's gaze swept the Marines. We move fast. Engineering deck is a maze. Caliph sabotage teams could be inside already. Stay sharp. They advanced deeper, boots clanging against grated flooring. The air grew hotter, tinged with ozone. Conduits hissed as coolant leaked in thin streams. The incinerator core loomed ahead, a sphere of layered shielding, its containment field shimmering like heat haze. Contact, Voss snapped. His visor highlighted movement. 3 Caliph infiltrators, their armor sleek and angular, weapons bristling with plasma coils. The firefight erupted instantly. Human rifles barked in disciplined bursts, each shot precise. The Caliph returned fire with arcs of blue plasma that scorched the deck. 1 Marine went down, armor sizzling, but the squad didn't falter. Voss advanced under covering fire, his rifle steady, cutting down 2 infiltrators with surgical precision. The 3rd tried to retreat toward the core, but Surin intercepted, her sidearm spitting a charged bolt that punched through the alien's chest plate. Silence returned, broken only by the hum of the core. Rourke crouched beside the fallen Marine, checking vitals. He's gone. His tone was flat, professional. He stripped the ammo pack from the body, handed it to another Marine, then rose without ceremony. Surin's frills tightened. We honor him later. Right now, we finish the mission. They approached the core. Its containment field shimmered violently, arcs of energy crawling across the surface. Rourke's scanner painted the numbers in stark clarity. 91%, 34 minutes, he said. And the Caliph coded a lockout. I can't vent it remotely. Voss frowned. Manual override, deep inside the shielding. We'll need to cut through 3 layers of plating. And the Caliph will know we're here. Surin's eyes narrowed. Then we hold this deck until override is complete. Humans, aliens, doesn't matter. We fight until the core stabilizes or we burn with it. The Marines set positions, rifles covering every approach. Voss deployed a portable shield emitter, its field crackling across the bay entrance. Rourke knelt by the core, tools unfolding from his pack, hands steady as he began slicing into the plating. Minutes dragged. Each cut sent sparks showering across the deck. The bombardment outside grew louder, closer. The canyon walls trembled, then the bay alarms wailed. Multiple signatures inbound, Voss reported, his visor flashing red. Caliph reinforcements 12, maybe more. Surin raised her weapon, voice sharp. Then we hold. Humans don't break. The first wave hit like a storm. Caliph soldiers poured through the bay entrance, plasma fire hammering against the shield emitter. The Marines answered with disciplined volleys, every shot measured, every burst lethal. The shield flickered under the assault, but Voss held the line, his rifle barking in relentless rhythm. Surin moved with predatory grace, her sidearm snapping shots that dropped Caliph one after another. Her frills flared now, not in fear but in fury. Rourke didn't look up. His hands worked the plating, cutting deeper, sweat streaking his brow. Layer 1 breached, he muttered. 2 more. The firefight intensified. Plasma bolts tore chunks from the deck, smoke filling the bay. A Marine screamed as his armor failed, but another stepped into his place without hesitation. Surin's voice cut through the chaos. We hold, every second buys us survival. The Caliph pressed harder, their arrogance evident in the way they charged. Certain humans would falter. But the Marines fought with terrifying calm, every movement efficient, every kill precise. Rourke's cutter bit into the 2nd layer. Almost there, he said, voice steady despite the storm around him. The shield emitter finally collapsed, its field shattering. Caliph surged forward, Voss roared, switching to his sidearm, firing point-blank into the nearest alien's faceplate. The Marines closed ranks, rifles blazing. Surin leapt forward, her blade flashing as she cut down a Caliph officer. You will not take this world, she hissed. Rourke's cutter pierced the final layer. The override panel hissed open, revealing a nest of controls. His hands flew across them, bypassing locks, forcing the vent cycle. Containment stabilizing, he said, voice calm. Core dropping to 87%, we've bought time. The Marines fought on, the bay littered with bodies, smoke thick, the air vibrating with the clash of empires. Zurin's eyes burned as she fired again, her voice carrying above the din. Humans don't retreat, we break through. And in that moment, as the Caliph faltered under the relentless human advance, the truth was clear. Arrogance met discipline, and discipline was winning. The core pulsed steadier now, its heartbeat slowing, but the battle was far from over. The canyon still shook, the Caliph still pressed, and the humans still stood, calm, unyielding, terrifying in their resolve. Chapter 4 ended not with silence, but with the thunder of war echoing through steel and stone. The acrid reek of burnt Caliph chitin and unburnt propellant clung to the recycled air of the control bay, thick enough to taste through the cracked seals of the Marines' helmets. Rourke's blistered fingers flew across the override panel, his HUD flickering as he cross-referenced core temperature against vent output, 83% and holding, the fan blades of the exhaust shaft screaming, loud enough to drown out distant canyon impacts. His gaze snagged on a hidden sub-menu he'd missed during the initial breach, a hardline failsafe tied directly to the Caliph orbital battery, programmed to detonate a shaped charge on the vent outflow if core temp dropped below 82%. 60 seconds max before the Caliph remotely triggered it, or the core bled cool enough to shut the vent entirely and seal the shield back online. Zurin, you've got 90 seconds to clear the comms gantry, he barked over squad comms, not taking his eyes off the panel. If the Caliph get a signal out, they'll throw every dropship they have at this position before the shield drops. She was already moving. 7 Marines remained from the 30 that had breached the canyon fortress an hour prior, all of them limping, HUDs sparking, rifles caked in blue Caliph ichor. A shock trooper had just breached the secondary blast door 10 meters out, its plasma cannon charging with a high-pitched whine. Voss put a 10 round through its eye slit before it could fire, the alien's carcass slamming into the deck with a wet crunch. Jenkins, left flank, Kale, right, I'm taking the gantry. She vaulted a pile of shattered control consoles, a plasma bolt singeing the edge of her pauldron as she ran. Up on the command deck of the Caliph battlecruiser Void Scourge, Battlemaster Zylthar slammed a fist onto his command throne, the gold inlaid carapace of his armor cracking under the force. The shield emitter on the primitive human-held world was failing, his ground garrison report confirmed, and worse. His comms officers had just picked up a massive hyperspace signature punching through the outer gate perimeter he declared sealed 3 standard days prior. 10,000 human dreadnoughts, the sensors screamed, far more than his intelligence had predicted for a backwater colony rescue operation. Seal the planetary shield at all costs, he roared, his translator glitching with rage. Redeploy the orbital battery from the mining platforms. Fire every kinetic round we have at the human fleet the second they enter the system's inner rim. And divert the 3rd Reserve Fleet to the surface, wipe every human off that rock before their capital ships can maneuver. He cut off the transmission before his comms officer could point out that the Reserve Fleet would take 20 minutes to translate from the outer system, that the Dreadnoughts would be in weapons range of his orbital platforms in 7. Back in the bay, Zurin hit the gantry's access ladder, a sniper bolt clipping her left shoulder and spinning her half around. She bit back a curse, hauled herself up the rungs, and jammed a fragmentation grenade into the power coupling of the Caliph comms relay. The explosion blew the relay's casing apart, sparks showering down onto the deck below as every Caliph handheld and console in the bay went dark. She keyed her squad comm, breath ragged. Comms are dead, no dropship call, no orbital coordination, they're flying blind. Rourke's HUD pinged as the core temp hit 82%, then held. The vent cycle was stable, the shield emitter's output fading to a faint hum. He keyed the fleet's emergency approach frequency, his voice flat, no inflection, no wasted words. Shield down in 120 seconds, clear for entry. Do not slow for orbital fire. He killed the transmission, then racked the slide of his rifle as the blast door at the bay entrance began to glow cherry red, Caliph heavy charges blowing the hinges. The core gave a final, steady thrum. The shield emitter died entirely, the faint blue haze that had cloaked the canyon dissipating to reveal the star-strewn void above, and the first distant flash of human dreadnought main guns firing on the Caliph orbital platforms. Rourke looked over at Zurin, who was jogging back down the gantry, rifle raised, and nodded. New orders, he said, as the blast door blew inward, a wave of Caliph shock troops pouring through the gap. We don't just hold the bay anymore, we hold the door until the fleet gets here. Word count, 942, Chapter 6, Episode 16. 10,000 human dreadnoughts break through hyperspace portal to save the besieged alien world ASF. The blast door collapsed inward with a shriek of tortured metal, and the Caliph shock troops surged through, their armor plates gleaming with the oily sheen of alien alloys. Rourke's squad opened fire in disciplined bursts, each shot precise, each movement economical. No wasted motion, no panic. The humans fought like machines, but machines with intent, cold, deliberate, unyielding. Zurin dropped to one knee, her rifle's barrel steady as she stitched a line of fire across the first wave. The Caliph staggered, their shields flickering, then collapsed under the kinetic barrage. She didn't pause to watch them fall. Second wave forming, she called, voice clipped. Heavy units, plasma casters, Rourke's HUD lit with fleet telemetry. The hyperspace portal was stabilizing. 10,000 dreadnoughts were already threading through, their drives burning white-hot, their hulls bristling with weaponry. The Caliph orbital platforms were firing blind, their comms severed, their shield grid fractured. Human main guns answered with precision strikes, each salvo cutting through alien steel like paper. Fleet is in system, Rourke said, his tone flat, unshaken. We hold until ground insertion. The Caliph heavy units advanced, massive frames carrying plasma casters that hissed with lethal energy. The humans shifted formation instantly, no shouted orders, just instinct honed by endless drills. 2 soldiers dropped smoke grenades, thick clouds billowing across the bay. The Caliph fired blindly, plasma bolts carving molten scars into the deck plating. Surin keyed her comm. Rourke, they're trying to pin us. If they breach the gantry, they'll flank. Not happening, Rourke replied. He vaulted over a fallen Caliph, slammed his rifle into the shoulder joint of a heavy unit and fired point blank. The alien staggered, its plasma caster spinning away, molten sparks spraying across the bay. Rourke didn't wait for it to fall. He was already moving, already firing at the next target. Above them the void lit with the fury of human dreadnoughts. 10,000 ships, each a fortress of steel and plasma, each bristling with railguns, missile pods, and beam arrays. They moved in perfect formation, a wall of firepower advancing inexorably toward the Caliph fleet. The alien armada, vast and arrogant, had believed itself unassailable. Now it was being carved apart with surgical precision. Orbital fire incoming, Surin warned, her HUD flashing red. The Caliph platforms, desperate, were redirecting their batteries toward the canyon. Rourke's voice was calm, almost detached. Fleet will intercept, keep firing. The dreadnoughts answered before the orbital strike could land. Railgun slugs, each the size of a shuttle, tore through the platforms, detonating their reactors in silent blossoms of fire. The canyon shook with the shock waves, dust cascading from the walls, but the human fleet held the line. On the ground, the Caliph shock troops pressed harder, their numbers swelling. They fought with rage, with desperation, but the humans fought with something colder, inevitability. Every burst of fire was measured, every grenade placed with exacting precision. The Caliph bled numbers, their advance slowing, faltering. Surin ducked behind cover, reloaded, then leaned out to fire again. They're stalling, she said, trying to buy time for reinforcements. Won't matter, Rourke replied. His HUD showed the hyperspace portal widening, more dreadnoughts pouring through. 10,000 was only the first wave. Carrier groups were already aligning, drop pods primed for planetary descent. The Caliph Empire had underestimated humanity's resolve. The bay shook as a Caliph breacher charge detonated against the far wall. A new wave poured in, larger, heavier, their armor reinforced. Rourke keyed his comm. Squad, fall back to secondary position, layered defense. They moved without hesitation, retreating to the gantry's choke point. The Caliph surged forward, only to be met with a wall of human fire. Plasma bolts collided with kinetic rounds, the air thick with smoke and ozone. Above, the dreadnoughts broke formation, splitting into strike wings. Each wing targeted a Caliph capital ship, hammering it with relentless salvos. Hulls split, reactors flared, alien vessels died one after another. Caliph fleet, once a symbol of dominance, was being dismantled piece by piece. Surin's rifle clicked empty. She dropped the mag, slammed in a fresh one, and kept firing. Her voice was steady, but her eyes burned with focus. Rourke, fleet insertion Ada, 60 seconds, he said. We hold until then, no retreat. The Caliph heavy units pressed forward, plasma casters blazing. One bolt struck the gantry, melting steel, sending shards flying. A human soldier went down, armor smoking. Rourke didn't flinch. He fired 3 rounds into the Caliph's chest, dropped it, then dragged the wounded soldier back into cover. Medic, he barked. The squad's medic was already moving, kit open, hands steady. No panic, no wasted words, just action. The canyon roared as the first wave of human drop pods streaked through the atmosphere, their hulls glowing from re-entry. They slammed into the canyon floor with seismic force, hatches blowing open, armored infantry pouring out. Surin's eyes widened. Insertion complete. Rourke stood, rifle raised, voice calm. Then we push. The humans surged forward, their firepower doubling as fresh troops joined the fight. The Caliph shock troops faltered, their advance broken. Plasma casters fell silent, their operators cut down. The bay became a slaughterhouse, but the humans moved with precision, not frenzy. Above, the Dreadnoughts continued their relentless advance, carving through the Caliph fleet. 10,000 ships, each a symbol of humanity's cold determination, each a blade cutting into the heart of an empire that had believed itself untouchable. Rourke keyed his comm one last time. Fleet secure, ground secure, begin full assault. The canyon shook with the thunder of human war machines, the sky lit with the fire of dreadnoughts, and the Caliph Empire, arrogant and unyielding, finally understood what it meant to face humanity in war. Word count 961 Chapter 7 Episode 16 10,000 Human Dread Chapter 7 The shattered line the canyon walls trembled as the Caliph regrouped. Their war chants echoed, guttural and sharp, reverberating through the dust-choked air. They were not broken yet. Their empire had thrived on arrogance, and arrogance does not die quietly. Rourke crouched behind a jagged outcrop, visor flickering with tactical overlays. The medic finished stabilizing the wounded soldier, sealing armor plates with quick-bond foam. Rourke's voice cut through the comms, steady as steel. Second wave incoming, hold formation, no gaps. Above, the sky was a furnace. Human dreadnoughts carved through Caliph cruisers with precision strikes, their beams slicing hulls open like surgical blades. 10,000 ships moved as one, a wall of firepower advancing without hesitation. The Caliph fleet, once considered invincible, was being dismantled piece by piece. Surin's voice came through, clipped but calm. Caliph reinforcements detected, heavy armor units. They're pushing to retake the canyon floor. Rourke didn't waste words. Then we break them here. The ground shook as Caliph war machines advanced, towering constructs of obsidian alloy, bristling with plasma lances. Their steps cracked stone, their weapons lit the canyon in searing arcs. Human infantry adjusted instantly, squads shifting into kill zones, heavy weapons locking onto targets. Anti-armor teams priority fire, Rourke ordered. Missiles streaked from human launchers, slamming into Caliph walkers. One staggered, its leg blown apart, collapsing in a plume of dust. Another kept advancing, plasma lances cutting through cover, vaporizing stone and steel alike. Suppress that lance, Rourke barked. A squad of human gunners pivoted, unleashing a torrent of rail rounds. The Caliph machine's weapon arm shattered, fragments raining down. The humans didn't cheer. They didn't need to. Their silence was more terrifying than any war cry. Surin moved beside Rourke, rifle steady. They're adapting, their flank units are circling. Rourke's eyes narrowed. Then we adapt faster. He keyed into fleet command. Orbital strike, grid 7-3, mark Canyon Ridge. Seconds later, the sky tore open. A dreadnought beam lanced downward, obliterating the ridge and the Caliph flankers with it. The canyon floor shook, debris raining like meteors. The Caliph line faltered. Their arrogance cracked under the relentless precision of human warfare. They had expected chaos, desperation. Instead, they faced calm execution, every move calculated, every strike decisive. Push forward, Rourke commanded. Human armor surged ahead, tanks with hulls blackened from re-entry, turrets swiveling with mechanical precision. Infantry advanced in tight formation, rifles barking in controlled bursts. The canyon became a crucible, fire and steel grinding against alien pride. A Caliph commander appeared, towering above his troops, armor etched with imperial sigils. He roared, voice amplified across the battlefield. "You are insects, you cannot break the Empire." Rourke's reply was cold, unflinching. "We already have." He raised his rifle, fired once. The Caliph commander staggered, fell, his armor sparking. The alien troops hesitated, their morale fracturing. Surin's voice was low, almost reverent. "They don't understand. They thought humanity was fractured, weak." Rourke reloaded, eyes scanning the battlefield. "They'll learn. We don't break, we don't beg, we finish." The dreadnoughts above shifted formation, their beams converging on the remaining Caliph capital ships. Hulls split, reactors detonated, fireballs blooming across the void. The Empire's fleet was being erased in real time, arrogance consumed by human precision. On the ground, the Caliph war machines collapsed one after another, targeted and destroyed with ruthless efficiency. Human squads advanced without pause, securing positions, eliminating resistance. The canyon floor was theirs. Rourke keyed his comm again, voice steady. "Fleet secure, ground secure, begin planetary sweep." The words carried across channels, a signal of inevitability. Humanity had arrived, and the Caliph Empire, once untouchable, was now bleeding under the weight of 10,000 dreadnoughts and the soldiers who followed them. Surin exhaled, rifle lowering. "They'll remember this day." Rourke's gaze was hard, unyielding. "They'll remember it as the day their empire shattered." The canyon fell silent, save for the hum of human war machines advancing deeper into Caliph territory. The battle was not over, but the line had broken. Humanity had pushed through, and nothing would stop them now. Word count 947 Chapter 8 Episode 16 10,000 human dreadnoughts break through hyperspace portal to save the besieged alien world ASF. The Caliph command spire burned, its obsidian walls fractured by precision orbital strikes. Smoke rose in jagged columns, curling into the alien sky. Human squads moved with mechanical certainty, their armor black against the pale canyon stone. Every step was deliberate, every shot calculated. Rourke's visor flickered with tactical overlays, enemy positions collapsing, resistance nodes blinking out one by one. He keyed into fleet command. Status on orbital suppression. A clipped reply came through, Admiral Vera's voice steady despite the chaos. Calith orbital grid neutralized, remaining capital ships are scattering, pursuit wings are already cutting them down. Rourke's jaw tightened, no survivors, they regroup, they retaliate. Above, the Dreadnoughts shifted again, their formation like a wall of steel and fire. 10,000 hulls moved as one, beams converging in geometric precision. The Calith fleet, once a symbol of dominance, was being erased in real time. On the ground, Surin advanced beside him, rifle angled low. Her voice was calm, almost clinical. They're breaking faster than projected. Their command hierarchy is collapsing. Rourke scanned the canyon mouth. Alien war machines lay in ruin, their twisted frames smoking. Human squads pressed forward, clearing bunkers, securing choke points. The Calith defenders fought in fragments, isolated, panicked, stripped of cohesion. Push them deeper, Rourke ordered. No pause, sweep until the capital is ash. The comm channels buzzed with confirmations. Squads moved like clockwork, their discipline unshaken. A Calith artillery platform roared to life at the ridge, its plasma barrels glowing. Before it could fire, 3 human railguns locked and discharged. The platform split apart, molten shards raining down the slope. Surin didn't flinch. They thought numbers meant dominance. They never understood coordination. Rourke's reply was cold. They'll understand extinction. The canyon floor trembled as dreadnought bombardments shifted to the outer cities. Firestorms lit the horizon, Calith towers collapsing in waves. The Empire's arrogance was being dismantled piece by piece. Fleet command cut in again. Ground sweep progressing. Resistance minimal. Civilian clusters detected in Sector 12. Rourke's tone hardened. Secure them. No uncontrolled variables. Human squads diverted, locking down the alien civilians with precision. No cruelty, no hesitation, just containment. Humanity's war machine did not waste effort. Surin's gaze tracked the horizon. They'll remember this as the day their empire shattered. Rourke's voice was iron. And the day humanity proved we don't bend. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the hum of advancing war machines. The Calith Empire had believed humanity fractured, weak. Now their cities burned, their fleets dissolved, their soldiers scattered. The dreadnoughts above shifted formation once more, their beams converging on the last Calith bastion. Hulls split, reactors detonated, fireballs blooming across the void. On the ground, human squads advanced without pause, securing positions, eliminating resistance. The canyon floor was theirs. Rourke keyed his comm again, voice steady. Fleet secure, ground secure, begin planetary sweep. The words carried across channels, a signal of inevitability. Humanity had arrived, and the Calith Empire, once untouchable, was now bleeding under the weight of 10,000 dreadnoughts and the soldiers who followed them. Surin exhaled, rifle lowering. They'll remember this day. Rourke's gaze was hard, unyielding. They'll remember it as the day their empire shattered. The canyon fell silent, save for the hum of human war machines advancing deeper into Calith territory. The battle was not over, but the line had broken. Humanity had pushed through, and nothing would stop them now. Word count, Surin's boot crunched on a shard of fractured Calith armor plating half buried in ash-streaked canyon gravel when the comm in her ear spit static so sharp it made her wince. Spearhead lead, this is Hin's 3rd squad. Access Trench 7 is hot, not small arms hot. Grid just dropped a plasma curtain across the entire approach. 2 KIA, 3 wounded, were dug in behind a fallen support strut, but it's eating through our cover. She keyed her mic, gaze scanning the trench mouth 300 meters out, where faint orange plasma flickered through the dust haze. Hold position. Rourke, we have a contact grid blocking the approach to the lower ward command conduit. The reply came half a second later, iron and unhurried, filtered through the channel's encryption. Above them, the low thrum of 10,000 dreadnoughts holding low orbit formation hummed through the rock under their boots. Type and yield. Before she could answer, Hin's voice cut in again, tight with the strain of keeping his head down. Thermal plasma hybrid. Doesn't trigger on motion, only mass over 50 kilos. Calith drone swarms are hovering at the trench lip. We can't get a shot off without exposing every man in the trench to direct fire. Grid S got to be tied to a secondary power tap we missed when we took the bastion. Rourke was silent for 3 beats, long enough for Surin to hear the distant whine of a spinal railgun powering up through the open comm channel. All fleet targeting, scan the canyon bedrock 200 meters below grid coordinates, look for a non-primary power feed. The response from the Invictus's tactical deck came seconds later, crisp and unemotional. Detected. Subterranean cabling runs to a hidden tap 40 meters below the grid's emitter array. Feed is tied directly to the capital's inner defensive grid. Destroying the tap will collapse the tunnel network above it, take out the emitter array without damaging the access trench or the central spire's structural supports. Worldbreaker is standing by for firing solution. Fire, Rourke said. The railgun's crack was loud enough to rattle Surin's teeth even through her helmet's noise cancellation. She looked up in time to see a 2-ton kinetic slug streak down from the cloud layer, trailing a faint blue iron wake, and slam into the canyon bedrock exactly where the tactical deck had marked. The shockwave threw dust 50 meters into the air, and when it cleared, the plasma curtain flickered and died. Somewhere above, 9,999 other dreadnoughts held formation, no stray fire, no wasted energy, every weapon trained on the next target, waiting for the order. Grid S down, Hinz reported, and she could hear the faint crackle of rifle fire in the background as his squad pushed out of the trench. We're moving, hold on, got a Calith command datapad tucked in the emitter's backup housing, transmitting intel now. The datapad's contents popped up on Surin's heads-up display a second later, and her stomach tightened. The Calith High Command wasn't preparing to surrender, wasn't even preparing to reinforce the outer wards. They were priming a planet-wide EMP cascade tied to the Spire's primary reactor, detonate it, and every human dreadnought in low orbit would lose power and drop out of the sky, while every ground soldier's power armor and comms would fry in 12 seconds flat. The blast would also destabilize the hyperspace portal humanity had used to jump into the system, trapping every remaining human ship and troop transport in Calith space indefinitely. She keyed her mic, voice tight. Rourke, you need to see this. EMP cascade, primed to detonate in 90 minutes. If it goes off, we lose the entire fleet, and every man on the rest of Surin's sentence dissolved into the crackle of a Calith wideband jamming burst that rolled across the valley the second she finished speaking. Rourke didn't need the audio. The datapad feed Hinz had pulled from the plasma emitter's backup housing was already plastered across the orbital command pit's main HUD, the 90-minute countdown glowing bright red in the center of the schematic. His knuckles whitened around the pit's cold steel railing for half a second before he keyed the fleet-wide hardwired channel, voice flat, no inflection, the kind of tone that cut through even the roar of crashing dreadnoughts and distant plasma fire. All ships cut non-essential power by my mark in 3, 2, 1, cut. Across low orbit, 9,999 dreadnoughts dimmed their external ion wakes in unison, every non-essential system, running lights, auxiliary comms, recreational holosuits, powering down in a single synchronized pulse. Their weapons batteries, hardwired to redundant shielded cores independent of the rest of the ship's power grid, locked onto the central Calith command spire jutting 3 kilometers out of the cloud layer 12 clicks south of Surin's position. No stray fire, no wasted energy, every barrel trained on the spire's reactor core housing, waiting for the order to fire. Down in the trench, Surin tapped the datapad schematic to zoom in on the spire's internal layout, her stomach tightening as the full scope of the threat clicked into place. The EMP cascade wasn't wired to the spire's surface emitters, it was tied directly to the reactor's primary coolant loop. Detonate the cascade and the EMP pulse would fry every unshielded system on every human ship in low orbit, send 10,000 dreadnoughts plummeting to the surface, and turn every piece of ground equipment from power armor to comms units to scrap metal in 12 seconds flat. Blow the coolant lines before the cascade triggered, and the reactor would melt down before it could fire the pulse. No EMP, no stranded fleet, no dead ground troops. The catch, the coolant control room, was 3 levels down in the spire's sub-basement, guarded by 2 battalions of Calith heavy infantry and a full complement of anti-armor emplacements. Grid S still holding for hardwired comms, Hinz said, popping up behind her with his rifle slung over his shoulder, a dented Calith heavy pistol tucked into his belt. Spire's internal security is on high alert. They're moving troops into the sub-basement stairwells now, count S at 400 and climbing. We've got 88 minutes to get to that control room before the cascade primes. Before Surin could respond, Rourke's voice came over the hardwired channel, sharp and clear. Orbital sensors show 6 Calith heavy drop ships lifting off the Spire's upper landing pads, vectoring for the refugee camps in the southern foothills. We can't take out the Spire without catching the camps in the blast radius if those ships land. Dreadnought batteries 1 through 500, fire at will. Do not let those ships cross the 10-click marker. The first salvo of railgun rounds left the dreadnoughts, barrels so fast there was no sound, only the faint blue streak of ionized air trailing each projectile. 4 of the drop ships disintegrated midair before their pilots could even adjust course. The remaining 2 turned tail and bolted back toward the Spire, only to be picked off by secondary plasma batteries before they could dock. Rourke's voice came back over the comms a second later, no trace of satisfaction in his tone. Ground team, you've got 86 minutes. If you don't blow those coolant lines in time, we're firing on the Spire core directly. Collateral estimate is 32% of the refugee population, 100% of the fleet and every ground troop. Your call. Surin didn't hesitate. She tapped her comms to open the channel to her squad, voice steady. We're taking the ground run. No loud weapons unless we have to. No stray fire, no collateral. The Spire's main ventilation shaft runs from the roof down to the sub-basement, big enough for a man in power armor. We go in through the top, work our way down. Hins, take point, your squad on flanks, Xeno militia on rear guard. Move out, the squad pushed out of the trench 10 seconds later, boots crunching on the still settling dust from the crashed lead Dreadnought, moving fast and quiet through the canyon's winding basalt outcroppings. They made it 800 meters before Hins held up a fist, the squad dropping into cover behind a fallen rock formation. He tapped his HUD, zooming in on the patrol 200 meters out, 12 Calith heavy infantry, 2 light tanks, a heavy plasma emplacement trained directly on the path to the Spire's base. Emplacements crewed by 4, tanks are dug in, Hins murmured, tapping the anti-armor warhead launcher on his chest. I take out the emplacement, militia sniper takes the tank commanders. We push through before they can call for backup. Go on my mark. The warhead slammed into the emplacement 10 seconds later, turning the crew and the weapon to scrap in a flash of white-hot plasma. The militia sniper's first shot took out the lead tank's commander through the viewport. The second disabled the second tank's turret before the crews could even return fire. The remaining Calith infantry scattered, and the squad pushed through the wreckage without taking a single casualty, reaching the Spire's base 12 minutes later. Ventilation shaft's grated entrance was half buried in ash, big enough for a man in full power armor to climb through without squeezing. Surin tapped her HUD, the countdown now at 74 minutes, and keyed her comms to Rourke. We're at the shaft entrance, moving down now. Hold fire on the Spire until I confirm the coolant lines are destroyed. Copy that, Rourke replied. Dreadnoughts 7 and 8 are on standby for close air support. We'll hold the Calith ground troops off your approach. Good luck. Surin didn't reply, already climbing into the shaft, the warm metal of the Spire's interior humming under her gloves as she descended. The shaft opened out into a dim maintenance corridor 30 meters down, the sound of Calith voices echoing from the stairwell at the far end. She raised her rifle, motioning for Hins to move up to the coolant control room door at the end of the hall, the plasma torch in his hand already glowing bright orange. The countdown on her HUD ticked down to 73 minutes, the red glow of the coolant pipes running along the corridor walls casting long shadows over the Calith heavy infantry already rounding the stairwell corner, plasma rifles raised. Word count, 987, the lead Calith's plasma rifle whined to full charge, muzzle glowing bright enough to sear the edges of Surin's vision. She didn't wait for the order, shoulder dropping into her rifle's stock as she put a 6.5 tungsten round straight through the trooper's optic array. Sparks showered the corridor floor. The Calith staggered back into his 3 squadmates, their aim skittering off the stone ceiling. Suppress move, Surin barked into her squad channel, no wasted syllables. Her team's fire hammered into the Calith's weapon mounts, disabling rifle barrels before the aliens could adjust their aim. One stray plasma bolt sizzled past Hins' pauldron, slamming into the coolant pipe running along the corridor wall. Superheated blue coolant hissed out, scalding steam curling up to fog the upper half of the hall, the sharp chemical smell stinging the inside of Surin's helmet. Hins was already at the coolant control room door, plasma torch roaring as he cut through the reinforced lock. Surin glanced at her HUD, 7219 on the Spire collapse countdown. Rourke's comms crackled in her ear, voice tight over the background thud of distant explosions. Reserve Calith company breached the east perimeter. Dreadnoughts 7 and 8 are holding them off, but they'll reach your shaft entrance in 10 minutes. You're clear to detonate whenever you're ready. Copy, Surin said, shifting her weight to keep her rifle trained on the stairwell. More Calith boots clanged on the metal steps behind the first 4 troopers, their rifles spooling up again. Keep the reserves pinned. I'll give you a mark when the lines are blown. The lock on the control room door gave with a sharp snap, Hins shoving the door open with his armored shoulder. The interior hummed with the low thrum of massive coolant pumps, walls lined with glowing blue pipes snaking toward the central coupling mounted on the far wall. 2 Calith techs cowered behind the central control panel, their hands raised the second they saw Surin's rifle trained on them, one yelling in broken common, "You will destroy the entire grid. The Spire will melt down." "That's the point," Surin said, stepping past Hins to the central coupling. She yanked the detonator wired to the main line free from her pack, tapping the override sequence into her HUD to sync it with the Dreadnought targeting feeds. Rourke, detonation in 3 minutes. Mark the 500-meter blast zone on your systems. Pull all ground troops back now. Dreadnoughts will cover exfil. Copy that, Rourke replied, and the distant thud of Dreadnought main guns rolled across the battlefield, the sharp crack of their point-defense batteries shredding incoming Caliph drop pods a second later. Evac order is out, we've got your exit covered. Surin set the detonator's timer for 90 seconds, the little red light on its face blinking steady. She gestured to the two troopers trailing her squad, both braced behind the doorframe. Hold this door for 90 seconds, then fall back to the extraction point at the Spire base. Go, the troopers nodded, settling into their positions just as plasma bolts started sizzling through the control room door, pockmarking the metal and sending showers of sparks across the floor. Surin glanced at her HUD, 70:02 on the Spire collapse countdown, the distant rumble of Dreadnought fire growing louder as Rourke's units pushed the Caliph reserves back. The hum of the coolant pipes thrummed under her boots, steady and unbroken, counting down the seconds until the Spire's bombardment platforms went dark for good. Word count 978, the doorframe shuddered as another plasma bolt slagged a fist-sized chunk of durasteel inches from Corporal Voss's helmet, acrid burnt insulation mixing with the sharp coppery tang of the gash above Private Marin's brow. Surin's HUD flashed 47 seconds remaining on the detonator timer, the Spire's internal collapse countdown ticking down to 68:12, coolant pressure spiking to 120% of safe operating limits. The hum of the rupturing pipes under her boots had sharpened to a high, keening whine. Voss spat a mouthful of blood onto the scorched floor, racking the slide on his Mk7 heavy rifle as he fired a 3-round burst through the splintering gap in the control room door. A Caliph warrior's screech cut off abruptly from the other side. Hostiles are stacking up in the hallway, he called over his shoulder, not taking his eyes off the door. Shields are holding, but the lock's melting. Marin's got the gap covered, but not for long. Marin's dented riot shield was propped over the lower half of the doorframe, pulse rifle trained on the hole. She fired a short burst, sparks flying off a Caliph energy shield pressing through the gap. 2 more down, but they're tossing plasma charges. I can't keep this up past the minute mark. Surin tapped the detonator's face, its red light pulsing in time with her HUD's countdown. 20 seconds on the det. Rourke's got the 500-meter blast zone clear. All ground evac is wheels up in 90 seconds. Hold for 10 more, then fall back to the Spire landing pad. Go, Voss grunted, firing another burst that sent a Caliph scrambling back from the door. The whine of the coolant pipe spiked to a shrill scream, and a jet of superheated white steam exploded from a crack in the ceiling overhead, scalding the edge of Marin's shield. She swore, wiping the condensation from her visor. Latch is gone. They're pushing through now. The lower half of the door blew inward with a deafening clang, twisted durasteel scraping across the floor. 2 Caliph warriors, carapace glinting red under the emergency lights, scrambled through the gap, plasma cutters raised. Voss's next burst took the first in the throat, sending it crumpling to the floor, but the second lunged, its cutter searing a line across Voss's pauldron before Surin put a round through its eye socket. 10 seconds, she said, keying her comms to the fleet channel. Rourke, detonation in 10, mark your feeds. Copy, Rourke's voice came back, steady as ever, the distant thud of 10,000 Dreadnought main guns rolling through the comms, so loud it made the console screens rattle. All evac pods are clear of the blast radius. Dreadnought Iron Resolve is locked on your exfil signature. Portals stable, Fleet S pushing the Caliph blockade to the jump line. You're green. The countdown hit 0. A low, bone-rattling thrum vibrated through the floor first, then the coolant pipes overhead exploded in a shower of twisted metal and boiling white steam. The Spire's external floodlights flickered and died, the massive bombardment cannons mounted around its upper tiers going dark one by one, their targeting arrays melting into useless slag. Surin's HUD flashed an external feed alert. The Caliph ground forces surrounding the Spire had frozen for half a second before breaking ranks, running straight into the crossfire of the human Dreadnought batteries laying down covering fire on the landing pad. Move, Surin yelled, grabbing Voss by the webbing of his damaged armor and yanking him to his feet. Marin was already halfway out the side access door, firing short bursts over her shoulder at Caliph pouring into the control room from the main hallway. The floor lurched hard under Surin's boots as the Spire's structural integrity failed, consoles sliding across the room and smashing into the far wall. They hit the landing pad in 3 strides, the armored exfil pod's engines already whining at full power, its hatch yawning open. Marin dove in first, Voss right behind her, Surin pausing for half a second to tap the data drive she'd pulled from the Spire's central command console into her armor's secure pocket. Full Caliph fleet deployment patterns, ground force counts, the coordinates of every Caliph outpost in the system. The Spire tilted another 10 degrees, the landing pad cracking under their boots as the core began to melt down. The hatch slammed shut behind her the second she cleared the threshold, the pilot yanking the pod off the pad hard enough to slam Surin into her seat. Behind them, the spire's core blew in a flash of blinding white light, the shockwave rattling the pod's hull so hard the warning lights flashed red. When her HUD cleared, the spire was gone, just an expanding cloud of molten metal and debris drifting in the planet's upper atmosphere. Her comms crackled to life, Rourke's voice warm with disbelief. Civilian evac is 100% clear of the atmosphere. Kalith fleet is bugging out through the outer jump point, no capital ships left in orbit. Portals holding steady, 10,000 dreadnoughts are standing by for mop-up orders. Surin leaned back in her seat, watching the feet of the dreadnoughts arrayed outside the portal, their hulls glinting in the light of the planet's twin suns. Below, the besieged alien world cities glowed bright, no more plasma trails arcing down from the sky to turn their streets to ash. She keyed the fleet-wide channel, voice flat, no fanfare. All units, mission complete. Portal remains open for mop-up ops. Dreadnoughts hold position until all civilian transports are confirmed clear of the system. Voss passed her a canteen of water, his jaw bruised but grinning. Told you we'd break through. She took a sip, shaking her head as the exfil pod burned for the waiting iron resolve. Told you we'd blow the spire first. The rest was just target practice.